to Patrick's point, right, how you program for older athletes is obviously different, right? There's obviously certain changes you need to make or you could make. But when you're looking at weightlifting, there's a number of things that are stalwarts in the program, right? Your lifts, so the snatch and the clean and jerk, are above all else. They're the most important thing. You have to do a certain amount of them each week to get better. Next thing from there, you need some amount of squatting and some amount of strength work, whether that be pulling, pressing, rowing, whatever it is. You need to be strong to lift the weights. Then you have your accessory work, your core work, and your midline stability work. What I'd say for you, Patrick, is in your later 30s, it's not a different thing. You're still training the same thing, but you have to monitor certain things a small bit more carefully, right? So when you're looking at the snatch and the clean and jerk, your volume, the overall weekly volume, just might not be as high, right? So if you had on the snatch, if you were able to do 20 working sets between 80 and 90% per week, you mightn't be able to do those 20 working sets. It might now be 15, 16, 17 working sets, or it could be as low as 8, 9 or 10 working sets. That is still the priority. You still keep that in the same place, but you might just drop the overall volume slightly. In terms of strength work, you're probably going to have to do something slightly different. In late 30s, you're probably not going to have to make huge changes, but as you get later and later on, the changes are that. So if we take starting with high volume, going to low volume and high intensity, starting with low intensity, going to high intensity with low volume, that just takes place over a much longer period. So when we have younger athletes or athletes who are physiologically predisposed to adaptation right now, this can happen so quickly, you know, that changing, that alteration of volume and intensity. In an older athlete or an athlete who's struggling with recovery slightly, you just have to spend more time. You have to spend more time at high volume, low intensity. You have to spend more time at medium volume, medium intensity. Spend more time at low volume and high intensity. So you just elongate the slope slightly. Overall though, it is something that you have to monitor. So it's not like this thing of, oh, an athlete mid-30s to mid-40s has to do 70% of the volume mid-20s to mid-30s would do, or vice, whatever it is. You just need to say, okay, I prioritize my snatch and my clean and jerk. I know my strength numbers might be a bit slower, so the progressions mightn't be as aggressive from week to week, or I might just hang out. Instead of doing week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, I might do week 1, week 1, week 2, week 2, week 3, week 3, week 4, week 4, and a 4-week block becomes an 8-week block. That's a very normal thing to do. But to be honest, I would say in your mid to late 30s, it's not a huge change, but they're just small things you need to pay attention to.
The biggest thing I've noticed, and I have a good few older athletes, I don't know why I keep getting them. So the biggest thing, Patrick, I've noticed with masters athletes is people like to crumple paper when you're trying to talk. So I missed a bin twice in a row now. That's twice you've had to miss.
No, I got one in after lunch. I missed one before.
Okay, 2 out of 3. That's terrible. So the biggest thing I've noticed about masters athletes is past sporting history makes the biggest difference. It literally changes how much the stuff Fitz is talking about. The biggest thing I've noticed that dictates what part of that they can do and how much is literally what their sporting history was and how long that they kept that up for. So I mentioned in the past I have a 45-year-old athlete in Japan, and he did athletics in college at varsity level, and then he kept that up and he did masters athletics in his 30s, and now he's going to weightlifting in his 40s, and he is such a different ball game from the other late 30s athletes I have who did not do a lot of sporting activity outside of their late teens when they finished up. It makes a huge difference. It really is a case of use it or lose it, and if you have not been using it, you will almost certainly have lost it. And if you never developed in the first place, it will take longer. Now that's not to say though that those athletes who didn't use it cannot develop some talent and develop talent they have and get better weightlifting, because they have. And from what I've seen, all of them are getting better. But it is just something to note that staying in condition is very, very important for those athletes, and staying active for their whole life. And by the time they get to weightlifting, it makes such a big difference. You know, if you stop using things, it inevitably, you know, you do lose it. So big thing I've noticed is the biggest thing, the difference really is their past activity levels was the main one. And then obviously all the stuff it's talking about, like some of them can handle loads of volume, some of them make great technique corrections, and kind of, you know, it varies then on the individual.